Hello and welcome to Move the Line, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm Ryan Noonan, joined here as always by Connor Allen, here to unpack our favorite plays, talk some stuff about Week 4 NFL football. Connor, what's going on, buddy?
Yeah, not a lot. I'm actually wearing a DraftKings shirt today. I didn't even realize that. So, shout out show sponsor, DraftKings. Apparently, I'm a company man today.
Company man. I'm in mourning. I'm in all black. I had a white shirt on today, but we had the Foye Aluakon news yesterday. It's tough, right? Gonna miss a couple days. And I'm glad we have the guest we have on today for this, because this Alex Singleton news in the last hour is devastating. And I massively respect our friend on the show today, though he has told me in the past, and he's correct, that Alex Singleton is not a very good football player, but the man was born. He was put on this earth to bring other grown men to the ground, and we no longer get to experience that. But again, our guest today, you can find him on ESPN. It's a big deal. At Benjamin Solak on Twitter. It is Benjamin Solak. What's going on, buddy?
Nothing much. Don't ask me for my opinions on Foye Aluakon either. I'll probably break your heart on that one too a little bit. But listen,
I know. It's not a great coverage linebacker.
That's all right. Getting a lot of tackles means, as a linebacker, means you did your job just a little bit too slowly, and that's what works for you and doesn't work for me.
It's a fair point. Again, we can play these games in lots of different ways. It's a game that I definitely like to play. Those guys are both super important. It's also very interesting that Fred Warner, not a massive tackler, because he doesn't allow a lot of receptions to happen right in front of him. So imagine how that plays out. But yeah, our tackle king removed for the year. Tough scene here, but onward and upward. I mean, Cody Barton sure as hell isn't better. We're gonna have to bet on Cody Barton for the rest.
I actually like a Cody Barton. Cody Barton's a good player.
We'll see how that works out for Denver. So, all right, I want to remind folks, 2 episodes of Move the Line each week. Today, we're going to do a little bit more sides and totals, overarching thoughts on things going on around the league. On Fridays, prop drop show. Me, Connor, John Hyslop, taking your questions, hanging out, shooting the shit, doing what we do in terms of uncorrelated parlays, same game parlays, ladders, all that stuff. Subscribe to wherever you listen. You can find us here on the 4for4 Bets YouTube channel. Move the Line wherever you listen to podcasts. You want all the official plays, all the things that we have going on at 4for4, access to everything. So articles, tools, rankings, projections, everything is part of the betting subscription, 4for4.com/plans. To get that, there's more information in the show notes of how you can get it for super cheap, as little as $10 for the rest of the season with one of our partners at Rebet. So if you have any questions, reach out directly. You can find more information here on the show notes. That should be able to help it out for you there too. All right. So question for you guys. I want to talk kind of like, again, overarching stuff. There's some stuff going on. Again, small sample stuff, obviously. Who you played mattered a lot. We're 3 weeks through. So again, we have at least some data. Sample is growing a little bit. I want to get you guys' thoughts on some of the to make the playoff odds that we have out there. Because obviously we have some, I guess, a surprising team in Cincinnati who's 0-3. We have a couple of surprising 3-0 teams that are interesting playoff odds right now. You guys can take it anywhere you want if you happen to look at the board. But Solak, I'm going to start with you. Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Seattle, all 3-0, all minus money favorites now to make the playoffs, which make a ton of sense. I think varying opinions coming in the season. Maybe I think like Minnesota, Pittsburgh in particular, everyone thought like those are really good divisions. Pittsburgh, Minnesota, maybe feisty, but probably comfortably the 4th team in their division. That is not the case. What are your thoughts on some of these to make the playoff odds?
Yeah, I think that like calibrating to the 3-0 stuff is tough. In the history of the league, since we've had like 8 divisions, if you start 3-0, you win your division about 50% of the time. Now that I think like that level of expected success for good teams is something that anyone who's bet over the last 3 weeks should be like, all right, well, hang on now, because all the good teams keep losing outright, right? Like it's been a very chaotic year for favorites. And so we should just take that with a grain of salt generally. And so it is surprising to see, I think, we're expecting, 50% of the time we win the division. We're still kind of a little bit shaky on, is Minnesota going to make the playoffs? Are the Steelers going to make the playoffs? So on and so forth. The team to me that interests me the most is Seattle. I had Seattle 7-1 to win the division preseason. I think the fact that they're still just minus 150 to just make the playoffs overall and not even win the division is still just residual respect for the 49ers and the Rams, which I get. That's why Seattle was such a long team preseason, but it's the NFL. NFL stands for not for long, right? Like the best explanation for why I want to fade the Niners and fade the Rams is just simply they've been really good for quite some time. And that it is just so hard to sustain that year over year, right? And even like our mind washes over the 4-12 Shanahan years that he had, right? It washes over the 500 year that Sean McVay had. So it's like, oh, these guys are perennial contenders. It's not that easy in the league, right? You accrue some early season injuries, teams catch up to you schematically, and all of a sudden you're just kind of floating around a middling team. So the Seahawks have now a 2-game lead on the division through 3 weeks. Teams that have had that have won the division 67% of the time. Since the 8 division format started, which is it's 12 of 18 teams. It's not a big sample, but still, they're so fast out of the gate right now. They have a legit good quarterback, right? So I trust them a little bit more than I do Darnold and Fields, excuse me. And yeah, I'm fading the Niners and fading the Rams just with all the injuries those guys have. So Seattle to me is the best look.
Shop it around. I believe DraftKings is out at -150. I believe there's a -130, 34, something like that in the market on Seattle to make the playoffs, which I think is quite interesting. Again, they have. It's a mix of, to your point, priors, and I know Connor's kind of in the same way. Connor, we were definitely bullish. I mean, anytime I had the chance to talk about exciting things from Mike McDonald this season, we were there. Touched on Boye Mafe, long shot, defensive player of the year, lots of different things that we want to get access to, ceiling outcomes for Seattle. So we're getting some of our priors met, our back scratch there. But then we kind of look at what they've done so far. They picked on Bo Nix. They picked on Jacoby Brissett, and then last week, whenever they, combination of Tim Boyle and Skylar Thompson is kind of tough to understand what's going on there. And you look at kind of the defensive metrics, they've been through the roof, but you have to remember and see the lens of who they played. I'm with Solak here. Again, priors being met, but any other interesting thoughts on to make the playoff odds?
Yeah, well, I think we'll dive in more to Seattle here at the end of the show with kind of their matchup this week, because I think that this matchup is a great litmus test for a lot of reasons. And there's a lot of interesting factors in that one specifically. But in terms of make the playoff odds, I think Pittsburgh's an interesting team right here to bet the no. I mean, we talked about relentlessly in the offseason, their early season schedule has some wins, but their late season schedule is an absolute gauntlet. After the bye, they're playing literally the hardest schedule possible. And so, yes, they're off to a good start. Yes, their defense looks good. Justin Fields is playing some of the best football that he's ever played in terms of playing within structure, not turning the ball over, not taking sacks. All those things can be true at the same time as when you put Justin Fields behind the 8 ball and forced to catch up, what's going to happen? And that's the unknown that I think is pretty scary. And I think you're getting plus money on a no in playoffs is pretty interesting here for this Steelers team specifically.
Yeah, the schedule is absolutely brutal. So, any thoughts on Cincinnati? Obviously, I mean, just kind of laying eggs at home to New England and the Commanders to start the season. The first 3 weeks is not something that smells like a playoff team. This is a team that kind of gets a pass in some senses. And I think maybe a little so in the market even because Cincinnati starts slow, right? And this is kind of what's happened. It's kind of been their MO here, in this iteration of Cincinnati. I think to your point too, historically, there haven't been a lot of instances where a team starts 0-3 and makes the playoffs. What are your thoughts on the Bengals?
Yeah, 6 times this happened, I want to say. And we always have to be a little bit more careful using to make the playoff historical data than to win the division historical data because we have the 7th team now, right? We have the 3rd wild card. But in general, yeah, 0-3 is pretty hard. Bengals aren't a good team, haven't been a good team. I was out on them preseason. It was under win total. They're 0-3. They should be better than that. They should be 1-2. They've played some close games and they're certainly not the worst. But this is a bad defense, kind of at all 3 levels. And one of the mistakes that I think we often make when a team has such a hot run as the Bengals did in 2021 is we say, okay, this is going to regress. They completed all these go balls, all this, they all this stuff against the sideline and Joe Burrow this. And then the defense had this elite run in the postseason. They're never giving up more than 20 points. This is going to regress. And then in 2022, when it doesn't regress, right? They go from being really, really good to being quite good. We're oh, shoot, no, it's legit. No, there's still a come down, right? It might not happen right away, but you're seeing right now a Bengals team that still has Jamar Chase, has T. Higgins back now, has Joe Burrow, but just can't do what they did in 21. And when you can't do what you did in 21, it goes back down now to brass tacks. Do you have a good success rate? Do you have a balanced team? Can you win in a variety of ways? And they just can't do that anymore. They weren't great at that in 21, and they're certainly not great at it now. The running success numbers look better, but a lot of it is because of when they're running the football and why they're running the football. I think that they've done some good stuff schematically. I don't think it's enough. Joe Burrow can't drive the football, and then defensively, man, good night. They do not have enough players in the secondary. They have a really, really tough defensive line. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, it might be the worst defensive line in football. And so you're just I have no faith in the Bengals. And if Joe Burrow gets me again with Clutch God, Joey B, whatever, then he gets me again. But I not a scary team to me.
Yeah, you had some good stuff on your Twitter this week, looking at just a reluctancy to let it rip. So people need to find that at Benjamin Solak on Twitter. Some great game and play breakdowns from Solak there for sure. I also want to circle back to your column this week. I think we're It's very, very easy, especially early in the season. Prisoners of the moment. Every season is wild. We have unpredictable results early, right? We have 6 months of building up all these takes as to what we think are going to happen this season. Then we get a couple of games of football, and it's really hard not to overreact. In your column this week, you mentioned having a few half-baked theories as to why it's been kind of a wonky start. I don't want to put you in the spot, but let's take one out for a ride. Let's kind of see how it feels. What are you thinking?
I think my prevailing theory is that it's so much easier to get good offense out of not good quarterbacks nowadays, that one, the teams that have good offenses but not good quarterbacks can randomly lay goose eggs on us. And then two, the teams that don't really have good quarterbacks that we think are going to underperform passing game wise can suddenly have spike weeks on us, right? And then that's how you I think about that Bucs-Lions game where it's like, oh, Goff is great. Goff is throwing for 400 yards every time he's played Todd Bowles. Oh, Ben Johnson's excellent. Oh, they have all their weapons. And then they just were potatoes in the red zone because Bowles knows that if you pressure Goff, if you make a move, he's going to pumpkin a little bit. And I think that guy was a lot easier to handicap, that Jared Goff in 2008 versus now in 2024, where it's man, if schematically they figure out the right stuff, he's going to throw for 300 yards at 4 touchdowns. They're going to put 48 points on the board. And if not, he can't work around that. We've gotten so good at elevating some of these quarterbacks. Think about Derek Carr, and they were 6.5 point dogs to the Cowboys and beat them by 27, right? And it was okay, because they're not gonna be able to do it against the Cowboys defense what they did against the Panthers defense. And then it turns out, oh no, you can do that nowadays, right? So I think because we've gotten so good at raising, it's important to understand raising the middle class of quarterbacks, right? We're just about raising the ceiling, raising the floor. No, it's raising the middle class, raising the median. There's when we take these quarterbacks, this tier 12 to quarterback 12, quarterback 18, bringing these guys up to get elite caliber play out of them. That's how you get some of these surprising upsets. And so to me, I say we now because I'm at ESPN, we are the number one people who do this. We want quarterback play to have so much more control over outcome than it actually does. We want every win to be because the quarterback was good, and we want every loss to be because the other quarterback was bad, right? It would be nice if we could discuss it that way and we knew good quarterbacks and bad quarterbacks, but largely that's not the rule. Largely it isn't. Largely so much more affects these games than quarterback play because of how good we've gotten as offensive coordinators, as star receivers, as star pass rushes at affecting the game outside of the quarterback, right? And so to me, I feel myself now paying a lot more attention to running game and those and situational football and fourth down decisions, because we can't just say all right, there's the good quarterback, there's the bad quarterback. I know what side I want to be on.
We oftentimes we're guilty of it too, right, Connor? We'll boil it down sometimes. You're just look, if we just say quarterback head coach, quarterback offensive coordinator, right? You're trying to handicap a game, and sometimes there's these alarming differences in terms of one side versus the other. It's almost like a tiebreaker, right? And to Solek's point, maybe that's something we need to continue to move off of.
Yeah, and I think we look at a great example too of this with Andy Dalton coming in here. I mean, just immediately lighting it up right off the rip here with Dave Canales and the Panthers. What is it? Second 300-yard game with the Panthers in the last 2 seasons. Bryce Young really failed to even come close to most of that, the entire time that he was there. It just became immediately clear he was able to execute what Dave Canales wanted. He was able to get the ball to Deontay Johnson. The offense looked functional again. The offensive line played well, didn't allow very much pressure, one of the lowest pressure rates in the week. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where if you are a middle tier quarterback, which I firmly believe that Andy Dalton, is, and then he can look really good in these situations, especially in good matchups against teams like the Raiders. So,
the biggest favorite this week is the Niners, 10 points over the Patriots. How positive are you that Jerron Mayo can't ruin Brock Purdy for 4 quarters, right? And enough to keep this within 10, enough to keep this within a score. I'm so not positive in that. I'm not yet good enough to figure out if it's going to happen or not, right? I think that's the thing that we've all got to get better at. But that's a 10-point line because the Niners are definitely better than the Patriots. Absolutely, they are. But the Niners don't have a elite quarterback back there. They have a guy who's very gettable. And so if the Patriots figure out which screws to turn, all of a sudden this is 13-9 in the fourth quarter, and we're gonna have a 10-point dog win the game. That's the sort of sensation now that I feel like is why the public is down so tremendously. Why dogs have been so big so far this year.
Yeah. It doesn't set me up for any encouragement here to try to handicap week 4.
Yeah, let's pick some games. Here we go.
Yeah. Did you guys take a look at anything in the awards market? It's not a market that I think want to do a better job. Connor and I touched on this, is just kind of looking at this and checking in at different points in the season here. Obviously, we have, I think, a Bellmark game there with Monday Night Football where Jaden Daniels goes out in an island game and puts up a pretty exciting performance, right? High completion rates, running, showing some of that ability. They win on the road as a touchdown dog. Caleb continues to struggle a little bit. Caleb pretty much minus or plus 130 or so most of the offseason for offensive rookie of the year. Now out to 7-1 And Jaden Daniels is a prohibitive favorite there, Connor. Any thoughts on that market or any of the other awards markets that you've kind of looked at?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously Jane Daniels looks great. I'm not ready to buy into that specifically. I think that I'm like most just interested in buying into like as many Malik Neighbors, overs, alts, props as you can. Talked about it last week on the show, 25-1 to lead the league in receiving. Right now he's 60-1 to win offensive player of the year. I mean, still at like 14-1 to lead the league in receiving. Like I think he leads the league in targets by the end of the year for sure. Just a matter of like being efficient with them. Also, Rashee Rice, 25-1 is really interesting. I think to lead the league in receiving yards. I mean, I know that he's mostly been a low ADOT guy previously, but this year, like he's just their guy. Like they're not getting Hollywood Brown back. Xavier Worthy still has a lot of work to do, but he's great at opening up the field. Travis Kelce, they just like a very clearly, in my opinion, have him on like the Gronk trajectory at this point of like get him in, make him last the season. He's gonna have some big games in the playoffs. Like put it in your calendar. Like bet Travis Kelce overs in the playoffs. It's gonna happen. We're gonna get value. So I think those are some that popped out to me. But curious to hear your thoughts, Ben.
Yeah, the Rashee Rice one is a good one. Like the Chiefs are always going to be high pass rate over expected. They're going to throw the ball a ton, and he's the only player that they want to throw the football to right now. Right? They will force themselves to throw it to Justin Watson and to Xavier Worthy, and like I think when Marquise Brown comes back, they will incorporate him. But by that point, Rashee's role is going to be so clearly defined. Like he's going to end more games with double-digit targets than he doesn't. So I like that. I think that right now I think Hutchinson, defensive player of the year, is one where just like he's plus 340 right now. He's second behind TJ Watt. There's absolutely no way if he and TJ Watt have equivalent stats, TJ Watt's getting that award. He's won it 3 times. Hutchinson has not won it. Like we know how this works. And even so, if it's like Parsons and Garrett and Watt and Hutchinson down the stretch, they're going to want to give this award to Hutch, especially if the Lions have general team success. Hutch already is starting to accumulate in crazy sack numbers because of the backup tackles he got to play. But in general, like his pressure rate is high, his pass rush win rate is high. Like I think Hutch should be the favorite for that award. I think that market is corrected a little bit slower than like Allen for MVP and Daniels for Rookie of the Year. I do like Caleb for Offensive Rookie of the Year at 7-1, just because, in my opinion, historically the award goes to quarterback who starts a lot of games, and obviously like Jaden's on pace to start 17, Caleb's on pace to start 17. So if we get Caleb playing better down the stretch and the Bears make a playoff push, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility because their defense is so stinking good, and then B, if we get Jaden missing any time, which we have to say like is absolutely a risk that you run with Jaden Daniels given the way that he plays and the hits that he takes. I do think that like Caleb's got value there because I like Malik can play well enough and produce well enough to get into that conversation, but besides him, like I don't think the wide receivers are going to. Running backs, like, I think it's quarterback or Malik for that award. And then I want to take Devon Achane, Offensive Player of the Year, so badly at 60-1 because he might go 1,000, and like that's only been done 3 times. McCaffrey did it in 2019 and didn't win the award because Michael Thomas caught 1,000 passes, which is obnoxious. But it should go to a back if he goes 1,000. Right now, I think Achane's on like 900, 980 pace or something like that. And you have to imagine they're going to run the ball a little bit more with no Tua for the foreseeable future. I think the fear is that Tyreek Hill is just going to eat into touches. Like they obviously use Achane as a running back and a receiver, but they're going to use Tyreek that way if they have to down the stretch. But still, like he's knocking on the door of that and like probably have like 11, 12 touchdowns to boot. Like that feels like a good look.
Yeah, 60 is a nice number there too. Monotone in the chat. Again, just reading my mind. That was the last one I want to circle back on as we kind of transition to some of the week 4 games here. Right now, your betting favorite in the market is Kevin O'Connell, and makes sense. Kevin O'Connell deserves a lot of Coach of the Year flowers, like plus 350. Feels like a gap too big for what's going on in Green Bay with LaFleur. 11s, 12s out there in the market. I think we're at 11 on DraftKings. I mean, look, for them to survive and not even survive, but it's almost the fact that like he somehow found a way to get actually good football performances out of Malik Willis is astonishing, and like he deserves credit for that, right? Where there's this like overarching Green Bay quarterback factory. They just doesn't matter who puts on the uniform. They're going to be a good quarterback. It's just what happens. LaFleur deserves a shit ton of credit for it. And now it looks like we probably have Jordan Love back. So not only were they able to survive that, he elevated a quarterback that looked like he just had no business playing professional football, which I know was pretty rough to say, but it was pretty bad in Tennessee there. Any thoughts on that, Solek?
I hate the coach of the year market more than life. Like it is my least favorite market.
Brutal.
The fact that D'Amico Ryans didn't win that award last year and Kevin Stefanski won it is like, it was disgusting. Like dude, I was in a hotel room because I think it was like whatever Super Bowl week. I was like mad. I was like pacing. I was so pissed. Coach of the year historically goes to a team that had like a win total of around like 7.5, 8.5 that wins double digit games. And just the problem with the Packers is that the preseason expectations for them were too high, right? The Packers were expected to be fighting for the division and winning double digit games. By the time we get to week 14, week 15, week 16, everyone's going to forget that they won 2 games with Malik Willis. Like, it's needle moving now. I don't think it's going to be needle moving later. So LaFleur should have won the award by now because LaFleur has been an excellent coach. I think it was 2021 or whatever, where I felt like he should have been coach of the year. I might have my years wrong, whatever. He's not. I don't think he's going to win it because I think that some team, I think that, you talk about the Vikings now with O'Connell, some team that had a 6.5 win total is going to win 10, 11 games. And that guy's going to get the award because, oh, wow, like, they're surprisingly good. Like Mike, which one's in Seattle? McDonald. If the Seahawks make the postseason, let's say they win the division, Geno ain't winning MVP. That ain't happening, right? Like, Boye Mafe, you said maybe defense player of the year, dark horse. Let's say that doesn't happen. They want to give credit to somebody. Oh, first year head coach, they're good. McDonald, and he probably did a great job coaching, but like the way the award is handed out drives me nuts.
1,000%. I mean, Connor, I cucked you for a defensive or a coach of the year award a couple of years ago with you in a preseason, a great one with Sirianni.
Mm-hmm.
I got in late week 14, week 13-ish on Brian Daboll, like 30. And to Solak's point, we were prisoners of the moment.
Daboll's a perfect example, right? It's like, oh, he won a lot of games. Cool. Daboll, coach of the year. Like, why? No.
Yeah, won 14 games. Jalen Hurts on MVP trajectory, gets injured last 2 games, and Sirianni can't win with whatever they threw out there, quarterback. And then, nope, not worth coach of the year. I totally agree, though. This whole thing happened too early. Like, if this happened in week 15 and they won 2 games, like, he's like a lock to win coach of the year.
Exactly.
It's happening in week, 3 and 4. No one's going to care.
Just watch the MVP odds last year. It was Dak, it was Brock, and it was Lamar. And then Dak lost a game and he was gone. And then Brock lost it first to Lamar. He was gone. And then Dak lost to the Bills and then he was gone. These awards are decided by who wins games in December. Don't bet into them preseason and then bet into them in December. Don't bet into them in between.
Yeah, just take the long odds too. That's another thing too. Take a bunch of there. Last one I want to touch on here before we touch on week 4. First coach fired. I don't know what the odds are right now because we don't have them like on a lot of domestics. Has to be Doug Peterson, right? Like I feel like
he's plus 140.
We talked about this preseason. Like maybe I wouldn't play it at plus 140, but like his seat has got to be boiling hot at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I saw it on Twitter. I can't remember which book it was, but it was plus 140. I'm fairly certain to be first coach fired, which is bananas. The thing about first coach fired that I'm trying to figure out is like, will Bill Belichick take a job mid-season or not? Right? Because if he will, then you have to fire your coach fast to beat the other teams who might fire their coach for Bill Belichick. If he doesn't, then and you're going to interim it, and then maybe that changes the logic of it a little bit. So like that to me is like the unique factor of first coach fired this year.
A lot of content jobs up for grabs if Belichick jumps back into
a lot of TV hours to fill.
Yeah, he is a little bit of everywhere, which is interesting to see for sure. Yeah, I mean, I went and looked at my 15-1 Jags to start 0-5 just to make sure I still had it in the bank. We're still there. So it's going to come down to, I think that they're 7-point dogs on a short week on the road, back-to-back in Houston this week. We're not going to dig long onto that one. Comes down to a coin flip game week 5 against the Colts, and we'll see how that goes. So, like having the 15-1 in the ticket. Or in the bank. So, all right, let's jump in. We touched a little bit about the first one there. Minnesota is on the road in Green Bay, jumping into week 4 here. Basically, Green Bay's 2.5 across the board. 43.5 is our total out there. Total's up a little bit from the look ahead market. This kind of feels like a pro Jordan Love line here, and looks to be the case. Like moving, practicing, feels like he's been close here. Solak, thoughts on Vikings Packers?
Yeah, I do think that Love plays in this one. I think that while there has been a lot of gamesmanship in media and in press availability, I think the plan was always miss a couple weeks and then try to get you back for the divisional game against the Vikings. I was fading the Vikings before the Texans game. I don't think the Vikings are legit. And it's annoying because I was very pro Brian Flores and pro that defense before the season. I have Kevin O'Connell coach of the year from before the season. Like I liked the Vikings for like a good trajectory, and now they're 3-0, and it's like, okay, this is a little too much wind in the sails. And so now I find myself on the opposite side a month later. It's kind of how the NFL moves for you. This defense is very good at creating chaos and beating you on passing downs. this defense is not as good when you're able to stay ahead of script on them, right? The thing about the Texans game and the thing about that Niners game is they kept losing on 1st and 10. Struggles in the running game for both sides, running back absences for both sides. Now you get Green Bay, who just showed you how good they are running the football in a variety of ways, right? With the quarterback and Malik Willis, but then also with Josh Jacobs in the handoff game, with wide receivers in the reverse game as well. I think they're going to stay on script a lot better and accordingly be able to put some points here on Minnesota. And then Vikings offense against this Packers defense that I think O'Connell is going to take Jeff Hafley to the woodshed, to be honest. This is not a good tackling back seven for the Packers at all. And they've kind of gotten away with it for the last couple of weeks. But if you go and you watch the film, you watch that Eagles game, like they just really struggle when athletes get the ball moving in space. And that's what O'Connell does so well, right? Is get Justin Jefferson moving over the middle of the field. Jordan Addison potentially back for this game. Get these guys into the second and the third level with the ball in their hands. I think it's a lot of points. So over 43.5 is what I took in this game. On side, I think it's very tough because I think there's going to be turnovers. I think there's going to be chaos. I just expect fast pace, explosive passes, a lot of points.
Josh Jacobs definitely has exceeded expectations. Connor, everyone wanted to put him out. This is just like 28, 29, a lot of miles on him.
I was there. All about Josh. I love Josh Jacobs. Great player. I believed. I'm very happy with the first month of the season. Please don't get banged up.
Guy has been awesome. Connor, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think this game for me comes down to two things. One, does Jordan Love start? As Ben mentioned, I think that's going to happen. I think he's going to start. Two, how do they handle Flores just absolutely blitzing Jordan Love's face off when he's probably not his most mobile at this point? And so we saw that in the second game that they played last season a little bit. Like in the first game, it was just a little bit, like I would say, erratic. Like it was like a little bit all over the place. That was still when Jordan Love was finding his footing, though. In the second game that they played, he played extremely, extremely well. They handled that chaos well. They were able to get Jaden Reed a lot, like, because the Vikings do a lot of like zone blitzes. And so I think that like going against that with Jaden Reed and getting him more into space, getting him the ball out quickly is probably going to be the reaction there with passing the ball. Running the ball, I think they're just going to have to be creative, that they're going to have to try and counter basically the blitzes, because obviously you don't want to run directly into the blitz, but if you can catch them blitzing from the wrong side or, for out of a different gap, like you'll be able to get a lot of advantages there. So the running game from a prop perspective, I have no idea how to play. I think I'll be on some Jaden Reed overs. I'm a little bit worried that Jordan Love just isn't able to move all that well. And if the blitzes are coming, he's not able to move a ton. But at the same time, I do think that there'll be enough. We just watched LaFleur turn Malik Willis into like an absolute baller. I am very confident they'll be able to figure it out here with Jordan Love at the helm. So I do like the overlook that Ben gave as well from a side perspective. I think I'm probably not playing it either way.
Yeah. I will say Love was grade 1 MCL sprain, which from what I understand is mostly pain management. And so I do think that he should be able to move near 100% because it's not like the limitation in the muscle or ligament. But I'm also making this up because I don't know doctors. Dr. Science.
It's a great note.
Yeah. But grade 1. So theoretically, he should move well.
Cool. I don't think I made the case here. I touched on it last week somewhere. I think there's something to be said with like playing against Flores is like equivalent to when a team, like especially in like NCAA tournament, matches up against the Syracuse zone. You just don't see it very often. And like, it's a little bit harder to like practice, especially when you're in the tournament, you're playing the second leg back to back, like 2 days off, and you don't have a ton of time to practice for the zone. Like it's a little different when it's in the division. You're at least a little bit more familiar with what they're doing there. And again, like he hasn't been in Minnesota for a long time, but I think they probably have at least a little bit of familiarity with what he wants to do. And it is a really good offensive line in terms of pass protection too. So that helps quite a bit. So it's going to be an interesting one, especially on the right side of 43 or 44. I think the over probably is a good look, juiced up a little bit, but you could find some flat 43.5s out there too. All right, another divisional game. We have the Saints on the road in Atlanta. This is another one kind of stayed. It's moved a little bit from the look aheads. This is Atlanta 2.5 everywhere. This is like 1 in the look aheads. Again, Atlanta kind of keeps it competitive on an island game against the Chiefs on Sunday. And then the Saints obviously struggle for the first time in a game against Solex Eagles, which I'm excited to kind of get his feel for here. The Derek Carr, Clinton Kubiak presidential ticket stalled a little bit. And again, like the Eagles kind of exposed the offensive line issues that I thought we were going to see with New Orleans early in the season. Did a great job disguising it. And I think all that like pre-snap motion, play action can obviously slow down the get off for the opposing pass rush a little bit. That offensive line has continued to take beatings. Eric McCoy now out, all pro center, kind of like the only real consistent redeeming offensive lineman there. Carlos Ruiz looks like he might be a question mark for this game as well. The problem is, I don't know that the Falcons can really take advantage. They're, again, one of the bottom teams in pressure this season. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, so Cesar Ruiz and Alvin Kamara missing practice on Wednesday. And so until I know what I'm getting there, I don't want to touch the line. If Ruiz and Kamara can both go, I'm all over the Saints. This Falcons defense can't stop the run. This is the worst defense in the league by success rate against the run. They're sixth worst also against the pass, which, not for nothing, like, they played the Steelers as one of their 3 games. Like, this is a lot. This is the problem. Like, they gave this up to Justin Fields and those boys. Like, this is not a good defensive front. They don't get after the passer, and they lose in the running game. They lose off the ball. And so I'm worried if I have to go with an interior offensive line of Lucas Patrick, then with McCoy back up in and with Ruiz back up in with these tackles. At that point, I'm like, okay, maybe this running game won't work. But one of the nice things about the Shanahan running game is it tends to be like, all right, plug and chug a alignment, and we're just running zone. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're doing, basic stuff. We can kind of interchange guys a little bit easier. And so if I can get Kamara and Ruiz back there, I think the Saints are going to run this football extremely effectively. And so accordingly, I would like the Saints plus 2.5 a lot. If we don't get those players, then I think it's not a look for me on either side, but I'm going to go and look for Jamal Williams rushing props. And I'm going to go and also look for Taysom Hill rushing props, because Taysom is playing more running back / fullback this year than he has in any other season. And they're willing to just give him the ball in the handoff game. And so if I do miss Kamara, I don't want a part of the side, but I think there's going to be like if Taysom opens it 29.5 rushing yards, I'm hitting everything that I can find on that. Cause I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 12, 13 carries.
Interesting. Practicing today. So it looks like he's trending in the right direction, Connor.
Yeah, and then with Kamara missing practice, obviously that's not a great sign there. What was most notable to me was like the Saints, especially against the Eagles, were not able to implement a lot of their play action because Jalen Carter was just like living on Derek Carr basically on every play action, because there was just the interior pressure was just so much. It was more than I can remember in a while that they were causing havoc. So for me, that was just like my biggest note, is that if we get a little bit here, a little bit back for the offensive line, like that could help. But like, can David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett like get pressure on the interior? Obviously, those aren't like, they're just not comparable to the Eagles like kind of interior. So it's like
the Eagles' third best interior defensive lineman is better than anybody on the Falcons right now. Like the cliff could not be bigger.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we balance here. So like to Ben's point, like if they can run the ball and if Derek Carr can get time like with play action, I mean the Saints are going to cook the Falcons. Like, it's not going to be close. So definitely like a wait and see for me on that as well. I mean, that's what, we were Derek Carr over bag holders, or I was last week. And that was pretty sad to watch. I mean, from the moment that they started ripping play action and he was just, the defensive line was all over him. I'm like, oh, this is over. Like, they're just not gonna be able to do anything.
Yeah. Carter couldn't get home though, which is very frustrating. Someone needs him to get over on a sack total this season to absolutely dominate and not be able to get home is frustrating. I think that probably changes this week, though. Like, brings us to the next game. Philly is on the road in Tampa. Again, another spot where injuries are going to be massively impactful. If we look at currently on the board, where are we at with this one? Same thing. We have the Eagles 2.5-point road favorites here. 44.5 is the total. Again, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Lane Johnson, all questionable. Mekhi Becton maybe as well. That gets real interesting. It's really this matchup of Eagles offense, Bucks defense, because we have Antoine Winfield, Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, all questionable for Tampa Bay. So we need to really, I think, get a grasp of what happens there. I think the other side is pretty clear. You got pretty much a healthy Buccaneers offense and a fairly healthy Philadelphia defense. And Baker's back to his sack-taking ways. And I think that's going to be a problem. Last year, massive regression for him, or I guess maybe, I don't know if Dave Canales deserves credit for it. Pressure to sack rate, kind of middle of the pack for the first time ever for Baker Mayfield. 19.4%, 25th out of 41 qualifiers. So again, not great, but like he's always Cleveland, Carolina, LA, like one of the worst in the league. He got the ball out of his hands significantly quicker last year. 3.57 seconds time to throw. We are back up to 4 seconds time to throw. His pressure to sack rate is doubled. We are up to 36%. He now leads the league in pressure to sack rate. So good spot for Jalen Carter and the rest of the Eagles. So, what do you think?
Yeah, so it makes it very clear. I was all over the Eagles against the Falcons, and then AJ Brown got hurt on Friday practice, and then I was still all over them, and they were up by 6 and on a 5.5-point line, and then they lost that game. And then the next week, I was all over the Saints, just demolishing them. I thought the Saints were going to take them to the woodshed, and the Saints were winning the game. They had the game won, and then Dallas Goedert had a 65-yard catch. So nobody nobody should listen to me on an Eagles game, because at this point, like, I cannot believe that I'm losing these bets on a team that I should know better than any other team in the league. With that said, Jalen Hurts has historically been very bad against Todd Bowles. Bowles has a really good rush plan for him. No Devontae Smith and potentially no AJ Brown makes it extremely difficult to pass this football. Now it becomes a run funnel game, right? It's Saquon and this running game and just trying to stay ahead of the sticks so well, and then go RPO game and go screen game against a Bucs run defense that, like, certainly could be missing some guys, but also, like, Todd Bowles has shown us historically, like, if he needs to put 10 guys in the box to stop the run, like, he will do it. Like, this is one of the most committed defensive coaches in terms of getting a plus box count and winning against the run. I think the Bucs win this. I think the Bucs should win this comfortably. I like the way the running game is developing now with Bucky Irving. I love the play they're getting out of their two wide receivers, in particular Chris Godwin from the slot. Eagles have had a ton of trouble dealing with slot receivers so far this year. Like, the Bucs should win this game. It's a good matchup for them styles wise, and then they're catching the Eagles at a really bad time health wise with their wide receivers. We'll see what actually happens, because I can't predict this Eagles team, but that's where I'm at.
All right, Connor, we got to lay 2.5 on the Eagles. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Ben brought up some good points. I will say this Bucs secondary that's been beat up, 29th in dropback success rate, pretty average in other metrics here. I've liked a lot of what the Eagles have done so far this year, but, like, it just can't be overstated how big of an impact AJ Brown, Lane Johnson, and Devonta Smith could make to this offense. Like, I mean, these are like the three best players, arguably, outside of Jalen Hurts. And
comfortably beyond Jalen Hurts. Like, Hurts is not a quarterback who elevates his team after injury. It doesn't happen. So, like, it's alarm bells, dude.
Yeah. It's pretty rare to see something like that. They're, like, literally three of the most impactful players, even, like, in the league. I mean, these are massive game changers here. So obviously, watch the injury report there. I think that we could see, like, some of the most impactful late week movements one way or the other, depending on these guys' statuses here, because it legit seems unclear whether any of them or all of them are going to play at this point. So definitely something worth monitoring there. And obviously, if you can catch a stale line either way, that's maybe how I'll play, catch a point or two of value if something big breaks there. Because I think that they are, like, that's significantly more impactful in my mind than, like, the Bucs being healthy, at least just from my standpoint. Like, if the Eagles offensive guys are healthy, I'm probably more interested in playing the Eagles. But, if both are healthy, like, I don't know, I'd probably maybe pass or still play the Eagles, to be honest, if they're all healthy. So,
yeah, definitely news to watch there in terms of, I mean, historically we've seen, Bulls will commit and do different things, as Solak points out. I mean, Vita Vea on off splits in terms of what they do rushing success rate wise, rushing EPA wise, it seems to really make a difference, right? They're 29th in rushing EPA allowed right now. Success rate's a little bit better than that. But, like, without this, maybe under 44.5 is a look. If you can grab that quickly, if you can get that hook, I think could matter if you get that injury news a little bit quicker there. All right. And then, bye week for Philly in week 5. So maybe you want to be careful with these guys if they're close. I don't know if that ends up mattering. You don't want to obviously lose games in conference if you don't have to, but I think, chance to rest a guy another week. Poor Devontae. I mean, Devontae Smith got wrecked. That's not a large man. He absolutely destroyed from behind in that game. All right. I don't have a great feel for this one. This is a Sunday night game. Buffalo is on the road against the Ravens. In terms of just specific handicapping, I mean, Ravens 2.5 point favorites, 46.5 is the total. I just think the Bills getting 2.5 is the right side. I think the Bills getting 2.5, you're teasing them up through the 3 and through the 7 is a great look. If you like to dance with some long teasers, I'm not a believer in the Ravens. I don't think they're like a bottom team, but I think the impact of what they had all off season on the defensive side, schematically, losing 3 coaches to defensive coordinator jobs, the offensive line struggles, looked a little bit better last week against Dallas. Still not a big believer. And although it's a short week on the road in Buffalo, feels like a dream spot for handicappers, Connor. But I just think the Bills are a better team. So if you're going to give me 2.5, I'm going to take the Bills and the points.
Yeah, it's I'm taking Bills money line. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's crazy. I think you brought up a lot of good points here. But if we were looking at this Bills offense here and they were still going to be a run heavy, spot here, which they have been mostly under Joe Brady. We saw last week, they came out in the first half, 27 dropbacks and just 6 running back runs before the 2-minute warning here last week for the Bills. So we saw them, like, Joe Brady was like, you know what? I think I see a big advantage here in the passing game. Like, we're going to throw a lot of the running game out and we're going to go pass heavy here. I think here against this Ravens team right now, they are top 10 in basically every rushing metric, top 5 most rushing metrics. And they're bottom 5 to 6 in dropback success rate, dropback EPA, things like that. And so I think that it would be, in my mind, very clear to do something similar. And I think that Josh Allen could have plenty of success here. Obviously, it's a little bit different comparing this Baltimore defense to Jacksonville, stylistically. But in terms of just like efficiency wise, I think that we see a pass heavier approach here from Buffalo, and we see them just really try and get after it. Defensively, I think that's, in my mind, kind of a wash. But I'm curious to hear Ben's thoughts. Maybe it's just me and you on an island, Noonan.
No, I strongly agree, Connor, with your read on Bills offense. I literally just wrote about it because it's one of the games in my column this week where it's, listen, like, that you should not be running the football into this Ravens front, right? The Ravens have given up one explosive run all year, and it was the Xavier Worthy end around. They have not given up an explosive run this year yet to a back, right? They've not given up a run over 6 yards yet this year to a back. James Cook, longest rush, 12.5 yards, by the way. And so, like, you are looking at what a really, really good defensive front for defending the run, a really, really good second level for defending the run, great safeties for defending the run, and then a cornerback room that's just got a lot of questions. And it might be the case that the cornerback room is coming around the corner because Nate Wiggins is coming back from injury, right? And they're changing the way they play the nickel now. Our Darius Washington got a bunch of snaps. Like, maybe they're figuring some stuff out. But to go right up against Buffalo and have that be the test, I just think that, like, yeah, they locked up Jalen Tolbert and Brandon Cooks with the Cowboys. Now you're dealing with a passing attack that has multiple guys at receiver in Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel, and you've seen them play Khalil Shakir, Matt Collins, right? All these dudes, and then you have Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, and then you have James Cook out of the backfield. Like, if you want to test your guys man coverage against that, like, I just think you're going to lose. And so I would really like a positive pass script for the Bills, either out of the gate to build a lead, or if they fall behind in this game, right? Like, it's the Ravens. There's no team in the league that likes to give a second half lead up faster than the Ravens do, right? So I think it's going to be a big day for Josh Allen passing attempts and completions, and a big day for this passing attack. And overall, I think it's absolutely correct to be on Bills plus 2.5. Like, the Ravens offensive line is getting better, just as the corner room is getting better. But again, like, it's week 4. And it's against Buffalo. Like, I think if this were in week 13, maybe I'd have some more faith in it. I think that the personnel issues, the new coaches, is just too much for the Baltimore to overcome in this one.
Yeah, totally agree. And this is why, to your last point too, with their ability to give it back late in the fourth quarter, this is why I think that's such a great teaser, like, to be able to have, Buffalo more than 7, regardless of what ends up happening in the game. If that's a way that you like to get down, you find something else. There's some other ones on the board, a couple we've talked about, depending on how, if you're a pro Saints are nice on the leg on that too. So last one is a Monday Night Football game, one of two, the second of two. We have the Seahawks on the road in Detroit. This is down to 3.5, total 46.5, basically across the board. Looks like there's a rogue 47 out there. Again, touched on it earlier. Context matters. Seattle kicking some ass. They've beat up on some bad quarterbacks, though. Again, like 2.9 adjusted yards per attempt, 17.7 yards per drive. Absolutely elite and bonkers numbers. Now, again, another spot where injuries massively impact, I think, our handicap here on both sides of the ball. We had on Seattle's side, Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy leave last week's game with injuries. Kenneth Walker, still a different dynamic of this offense when he's on the field. Don't know his status. And on Detroit's side, tough one as well. Sam Laporta, ankle sprain. Brian Branch, concussion symptoms. We don't know what happens there. Elam McNeil, again, last year, it's a pretty drastic splits. It's a great run defense, but when McNeil's on the field and not on the field, some pretty substantial numbers that happen there. And then Frank Ragnow is a center. Losing him for an extended period of time is going to be a problem. We'll see if it impacts them this week. They also lost Derek Barnes and Marcus Davenport for the season. So those guys aren't even questionable this week. Those guys are out. So, like, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, so I had Seattle plus 4.5 at open. I think the line is fair at 3. And right now we're at 3.5. So I still lean Seattle because I think you're getting the hook, which is nice. But I think we're a lot tighter to what it should be. Detroit, think about what we've learned about this Rams defense and how Detroit should be able to just put them away and instead let that thing get to overtime. Think about what we've learned about this Cardinals defense, and then what the second half looked like for Detroit, where they couldn't put enough scores on the board to kind of salt this thing away. Like, the Buccaneers injuries, right? In the ways that Bo Nix able to take advantage of that, but they weren't on offense. Like, Detroit is fine, but also, like, we have yet to have the performance from them this season offensively that's like, oh yeah, this offense is cruising. This is the sort of group that I trust. While Geno Smith and the Seahawks have done that a couple times now, right? Geno since the beginning of last season has just been like a unquestioned top 10 quarterback in the NFL by any metric that you want to look at. And now with Ryan Grubb, like, I think they're finding a much more diverse passing attack. I don't think you brought up Kenneth Walker. I don't think their offense is where they want it to be just yet. And I think that they're having to do a lot in the passing game to account for some of the running game issues, account for some of the pass protection issues. But still, like, they're getting DK involved in isolation routes in a way they weren't able to last year. Smith and Jigba down the field in a way that they weren't able to last year. Like, this passing game is humming. They got several weapons. They have a really aggressive and dynamic quarterback, and they're going up against a guy in Aaron Glenn who's just going to play man coverage and just going to it's going to go that way for 4 quarters. So I think it's still Seattle. I honestly, I would lean over on a total of 46.5, if not for the fact that like it's been 60% under so far this year and scoring is down, and like maybe let's chill out on that a little bit. But I do think it's going to be points. And even if Detroit has that second half lead, I think that Geno can throw his way back into a cover. Detroit has not put teams away the way they should in the second half. So to me, the dog here is Seattle for sure.
Yeah, so that makes a great point. And what we've seen the last couple of years with Geno against man too, Connor, it's been really good. Going to find some nice matchups here, particularly in the slot, I think, with JSN. What do you got here?
Yeah, some of my biggest interesting points here would be on the Seattle defensive side and how they match up here against this Detroit offense. I went back and looked at kind of how the Ravens played this Detroit team, and that was a tough game to take too much from because they smoked them. I mean, they were up 14-0 in the first quarter. Like, it forced Detroit into a drop back game. And I think that we saw after 2 weeks ago where Detroit blew the game against Tampa and didn't really play well. We had a Jared Goff like backbreaking interception, in the second to last drive there. And then we saw them against Arizona shift, be like, all right, we're just going to run the ball, like as much as possible, try and control the game. Still almost bit them. But, I thought that was like a meaningful shift back to what they want to be essentially. And so in this spot here, I'm interested to see if they're able to do that, because Seattle defense played really well on the ground in week 1 at like top 3 metrics. Week 2, we're hit for like 170 rushing yards. I think that there's a chance that Detroit is able to run the ball. It's just a question of whether or not, like, how does Seattle counter that? What do they focus on here? Without Sam Laporta, I think that takes away some of their, the Detroit's passing game there specifically. So it's going to be a little bit of a chess match here, I think, between McDonald and Ben Johnson, and kind of like what wins out. I personally would lean Seattle at +3.5 as well. Just given everything we've seen, especially on Seattle's offense, you're like, I'm not convinced that Detroit's defense is really any good, to be honest. Outside of Aiden Hutchinson, it's like, does Aiden Hutchinson get a pressure and a sack? Yes, no. Their run defense is great. Like, that's, what I'll give them. But, again, like in a spot here, if maybe they don't even have 100% Kenneth Walker, like that shouldn't be a priority for them anyways, to be honest. Like, they should be focusing on passing the ball here.
Injury report, again, another one that massively matters. Again, recording on a Wednesday afternoon, just coming to some of that preliminary stuff as they come out on a Wednesday. So hard to make concrete decisions. But again, these lines are available. And if you find that there's an edge to be had now, something for you to jump on. So those are all the games I had, guys. Is there anything else you guys want to highlight before we take off in the game that jumped out to you?
No, I don't want to bet the NFL anymore. So I don't know. These are most of the big ones that I'm looking at this week.
Any keys to victory that we have to look at? So like
that's to be done an hour before primetime games. That's to be released for the masses. You can't be sneaking those out too early. I haven't looked at any of the primetime matchups yet. So I don't know.
That's fair. All right, Connie, got anything to wrap up?
Bears -2.5. Just gets back on track. Rams are just beat up so bad. Not an hour never, but kind of an hour never for the Bears, so it's looking better every week. Caleb discourse, I think, is pretty bad online right now. I can't honestly say that there's been anything worse than having Justin Fields, people in my mentions for the last year and a half, still talking about this. So happy to hopefully have that put to an end here if Caleb starts playing a little bit better in the coming weeks.
DJ Moore longest, Rome longest. Those are
all of them.
Those are
Rams are trotting out us. We're playing defense right now for the Rams this week. So
yeah, I'll probably be back on Bears again, and I'll probably hate every second of it.
Yeah, I'm ready. That's why I think the Caleb 7-1 is interesting, because that's the slate of opposing defenses coming up is just absolutely just soft. If it doesn't happen, it's gonna be trouble. It's gonna be trouble. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got Commanders, Cardinals, Rams, Jags, just a bunch of soft ones. So. All right, so I appreciate it, man. Everyone needs to get a ESPN Insider subscription, right? Where else can they find you?
ESPN Plus, baby. Yeah. No, my columns are ESPN Plus, podcast, media content featuring Lenny, ESPN Daily. You should check those out. Come hang out. It's a good time.
Love it. Appreciate your time as always. Everyone on Twitter at Benjamin Solak. You probably already follow him, but great football follow. If you're a football nerd like us, we appreciate your time greatly. Remember, subscribe before you take off. 4 for 4 bets on the YouTube channel. Move the line wherever you listen to podcasts. Prop drop coming back 3 p.m. Eastern on Friday. For Connor and Solak, I'm Ryan. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks, everyone.